Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for listening to the 134th ever episode of the Missouri Sports Podcast, brought to you by 106 Apparel and recording from the Revel Advertising Studio in beautiful Springfield, Missouri. I'm one of your hosts, Cameron Albert, alongside my good friend and fellow Mizzou fan, Kyle DeVries. How are you doing today, Kyle?
I'm doing great, Cameron. How are you?
I'm doing well. Have you checked that bracket challenge group?
Oh,
lately?
Yes, I have, and I bet there's a really specific reason you're bringing that up right now, huh?
Oh, I haven't checked it. How's it looking?
Oh, pretty good. Think I'm winning.
Oh, okay, that sounds about right. You know, I can't win it forever, except I am winning, and there's very few left that can take the top spot from me. It definitely can happen, and one of those people is producer Cameron. What do you need to happen to win this? You need Baylor to win.
Yeah, if Baylor wins it all, that's my only chance, and I don't know for sure that that'll get me the win, but...
How could we let this happen, is what I want to know.
You're asking the listeners, I assume?
I'm asking myself. I'm asking the listeners. How did we let Cameron run away with this thing potentially again?
I still need Gonzaga to come through for me.
Which it's looking like they are going to definitely do that.
They look really, really good at basketball.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at... Yeah, Baylor winning is the only shot the group has, basically.
I have to send you another shirt.
If Gonzaga wins this game, their next game, I can't win.
Oof. I'm not going to crunch the numbers too much. I kind of want to be surprised. If it comes down to the championship game, that'll be fun. If it's Gonzaga Baylor, and the group champion comes down to that, that'll be a good game.
Man.
If Houston just takes care of business, though, I'll be sitting pretty, I think.
If it's Gonzaga Baylor, I can't win, so that stinks.
We're back, folks, from vacation. We had a nice time. We enjoyed the mountains of Colorado, and we watched some basketball. If you missed our last episode, it was right after Mizzou lost to Oklahoma. Hopefully you've moved on from that, so maybe you needed a little bit of time before you revisited that game. That's there for you if you want to listen to our immediate reaction after watching the game together. Were there any big games, any big moments from the NCAA tournament so far that you want to talk about? UCLA is making this crazy run.
Yeah, Oregon State, UCLA, both doing the impossible.
UCLA, you'd think they have enough Final Fours. They don't need to just grab one when they're an 11 seed.
Heck of a job by Mick Cronin in his first season.
Surprising, I think.
Yeah. The UCLA game versus Alabama was really good, where Alabama made a last-second three to tie the game to send it to overtime, and they did literally nothing in overtime and lost, but that was still a very exciting finish to regulation. I don't know. I feel like there hasn't really been any crazy buzzer beaters. I feel like the beginning of the tournament was definitely the best, it seemed like, with some big upsets and some big moments, but...
Abilene Christian doing work for me.
The system
lived on through Abilene Christian and Houston to some extent. I still can't get over, we talked about it 2 episodes ago, but I still can't get over Loyola getting matched up with Illinois in the second round.
Yeah, that was awful for both teams, and we said that when we were filling out our brackets, that was just unfortunate seeding.
And then for them to go and lose to Oregon State was just...
So weird how, Oregon State season was just so pedestrian.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were, I don't know.
They were picked last in the preseason in the Pac-12.
Yeah. The Pac-12 has had an amazing showing in the tournament. I don't think anybody saw that coming.
USC was another one of my system teams that did well for me.
Yeah.
But should be a good Final Four. I think UCLA's run will probably come to an end here against Gonzaga.
Yes, I believe so.
All right, so the other thing that's been happening this past week is everybody's transferring from everywhere. There's over 1,000 Division I basketball players in the transfer portal, and there's a little over 300 Division I basketball teams. So we've reached the point, I think, where there's 3 transfers per team.
Pretty much.
And Mizzou is going to have to grab some transfers because We've had some players leave. I think we're just going to basically go right down through the roster, talk about who's leaving, who's returning, the incoming freshman, incoming transfer that we've added already, and then some possible transfer additions that everybody should keep their eye out for. Before we get all into that, though, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can go there to watch a video version of the podcast. Also, if you want some perks for listening and watching, check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/Missouri Sports Pod. Kyle, we always knew that Mizzou would be needing to replace this senior class. And then it was announced that actually they could come back for another season if they wanted to. And but we kind of thought we were going to need to be replacing them no matter what. It just didn't really make the most sense. You could make arguments for a few guys that it might make sense for them to come back. It doesn't look like that's going to happen. In fact, Conzo Martin did an interesting thing, and he came out publicly and said that he wouldn't really take any of the seniors back if they basically just came to him and said, hey, I just want to play basketball another year. He said they would need to have some kind of goal outside of basketball, that staying in school another year, helped them accomplish that goal. I got to be honest with you, I don't really understand that. Is he also going to not take a transfer that is playing an additional year when they would have otherwise used up their eligibility? It seems like he would be open to that type of transfer.
Yeah, just because they're potentially making their career better or something.
Yeah.
I don't really know, and I don't know. I mean, if a player said, "I want to return because I think it helps my professional prospects," maybe is that a reason?
I don't know.
Illegitimate? Yeah, I'm with you. I thought that was a weird comment at the time. And I think he just loves that, and I'm not saying that he's not this person, because I do think he's a very wise person and a very good role model for the guys and everything. But sometimes I just wonder if he just really loves leaning into that as much as humanly possible. Yeah. Yes.
Well, and I just don't think he'll be able to remain consistent with that. I mean, if that's the reason for not accepting a player back for a fifth season, then is he just pretending like the COVID additional year of eligibility isn't happening for anybody? Because why would you block the seniors from doing that and not are you going to let underclassmen play an additional year down the line? Because they'll be allowed to. They have another year of eligibility. And it just seems weird. Maybe he's just getting in front of this because he knows he wants the eligibility on his team to be more normal, for lack of a better word. And maybe he's just trying to get ahead of it because he knows he doesn't want to deal with any of that.
Yeah. I also felt like it may have been possible that he just, I don't know, that we might be overreacting to that comment a little bit, because I thought it was possible maybe that if these guys want to come back for another year, they just think of another reason, and It's not that big of a deal, and Consul lets them come back.
Yeah.
As long as it's not, I want to play another basketball season because it's fun.
Yeah.
So I don't know how
Not
much
ready to
he's
start
really
grown-up life yet.
enforcing that, but I did think that was kind of an interesting comment.
Yeah. Well, Drew Smith, Jeremiah Tillman, Mitchell Smith, and Drew Buggs all graduated, and it doesn't appear as of yet that they will be exercising their option to play another season. We haven't actually heard definitively from any of them, but we would probably know by now if that was going to be the case. We do know that Mark Smith is going to play another season, but it will not be for Missouri. It will actually be for Kansas State. So that was interesting. The first thing that came out on that was that he was entering the transfer portal, which tells you he intends to play basketball another season, and
pretty quickly landed at Kansas State.
Yeah. If he was going to use up that year at Missouri, then he wouldn't need to enter the transfer portal. It would just be, I'm coming back. So he's going to Kansas, Manhattan, Kansas State. And
so did he just not have a good enough reason to come back, or did he really want to just leave?
well, it makes you wonder, and it makes me that's just a very curious thing. He has said publicly that he has no ill will towards Mizzou or the coaches. He is still a fan of Konzo and everything, his entire time at Missouri. So maybe, I don't know, that this whole offseason is just going to be a little bit of a mystery as far as all the motivations of everybody, because there's so many players that are going to have new landing spots, and it just makes you wonder who was guiding what decisions along the way.
Yeah, I really did think that we would have at least somebody come back. I thought Drew Buggs might be a good candidate to come back, but I mean, I'm not going to lie. After seeing the caliber of players that are available out there, I'm not sure. It's going to sound really negative, but I'm not sure that we want Buggs to come back, at least from a basketball performance standpoint. It seems like there are upgrades available.
And maybe that's the main thing that is going into Konzo's thinking in this period, is just like, well, if there's all these excellent players coming available, maybe we've already have ties with some of them, we already have relationships with some of them, and he basically took that group. He has to think that he took that group as far as they could go this past season, and wanting to just have another retread team that was a 9 seed in the NCAA tournament. Maybe that's not too appealing. Maybe it's more appealing to just get a bunch of fresh faces in, and at some point, I don't know. It's just so interesting, because the fans on one hand probably would love to have Drew Smith and Jeremiah Tillman and even Mark Smith to some extent back, just for that continuity, but that's the same players that kind of if you're the fan that wants them back, are you okay with being an NCAA tournament bubble team again? And what is that better than not making the tournament and then having a 2 or 3 year process to get back up to that point again? I don't know.
Yeah, I honestly, from a fan standpoint, I'm perfectly fine with the situation we're in right now. I think we always knew that we might run into a little bit of a reset year. Maybe not quite to this extent as far as roster turnover goes, but I think it's exciting.
Yeah.
And kind of like you just said, I mean, I feel like we went about as far as we could with these guys. If Drew Smith wanted to come back, would I be happy? Sure, absolutely. He and Jeremiah Tillman are probably the only two I'd be really excited about wanting to come back as far as the seniors. But I think it's exciting to have a shot at all these talented players on the transfer portal, and I think that we'll land some really good players, and we already have. And I think that just makes for a really interesting upcoming season with so many fresh faces.
So outside of the seniors, we have 4 other players that will not be returning to Missouri. Most noteworthy, Xavier Pinson. There was some chatter that he might be transferring last season. We thought maybe that he was done at Mizzou earlier than this already, and he had kind of an up and down junior season and had some really high highs, but just games where he just didn't show up, and he seemed like he was in Konzo's doghouse often. So he is transferring, and reportedly has already heard from Auburn as a potential suitor, and that I hope he doesn't.
Arkansas too, I think.
Yeah, Arkansas. Hopefully Arkansas is a given. They literally reach out to every single transfer that comes available. But I hope he does not end up in the SEC. I don't know. I don't want to play against former players.
I know, that's weird. Yeah, this was kind of expected. I thought that he would either transfer or move on to some kind of professional league or something like that.
Yeah.
Especially with how much turnover there was on the rest of the roster, he probably thought, well, I'll give it one last hurrah, because it sounded like you said, it sounded like he considered leaving last year. But yeah, I mean, think about how many possessions started and ended with Pinson, and how big of a part he was of this team. I mean, that's just, for good or for bad, that's just a lot of usage that is going to be gone next season. So I hate to see him go, obviously. I mean, he was a great player at times, but I also think that just his up and down nature was really just starting maybe to rub the team the wrong way. And obviously Konzo had some issues with him, and we won't know the full extent of those, but you've probably read things online like Konzo and Xavier Pinson did not really get along probably very well all the time, and it may be possible that Xavier Pinson could really benefit from this transfer, and Mizzou could really benefit from him transferring as well.
Yeah, you don't get that often. Yeah, I mean, he became a defensive liability at times this past season, and I think that's what caused him to end up on the bench more so than just like mistakes like turnovers and stuff. I think it was on the defensive side mostly. We also got news that Parker Braun is transferring. Another player that there was kind of rumors and rumblings about maybe him transferring last season, but he came back for another year. Now he's transferring. Also, Chang, who never saw the floor for the Tigers, is transferring. And then most recently, and maybe a little bit more of a surprise, Torrence Watson is transferring.
Yeah, I mean, if there's a trend with all four of these guys, it's that they didn't play great defense. And you saw flashes out of all of them. You can find positives in any of them.
Saw a lot of flashes out of Chang in particular.
Okay, maybe I was excluding Chang from that. But with Torrence Watson, with Xavier Pinson, and Parker Braun, all three of those guys, I mean, they showed flashes, obviously some more than others, but none of those three guys played very good defense, and that's probably right there not going to fly on Konzo's team.
But each one of them, no, to your point, if Pinson is the guy that's getting to the rim, getting fouled, making his free throws, making three-pointers, if Watson is the guy that we saw make 8 threes 2 seasons ago in Mizzou Arena, if Parker Braun is knocking down threes and, dunking the ball everywhere, and if they're just being really efficient on offense, then you can deal with a little bit of lacking defensive play. But they just didn't bring the consistency on offense, or the defense was just so bad that you just couldn't do anything. So if they could have just elevated one aspect of the game a little bit more, then I think we would have wanted them to stay quite a bit more.
Yeah. So there's been some, from the usual suspects on Twitter, there's been some weeping and gnashing of teeth over some of these transfers. I personally don't really get it because, well, first of all, I'll withhold judgment until the roster's complete. Yeah. And if I'm not happy with where we are after we've added 3 or 4 transfers, then maybe I'll be right there with you criticizing, but
keep going.
At this point, I don't think I want to criticize Konzo because the players that are in the transfer portal right now really just didn't move the needle that much, if I'm being honest, and especially at Chang. And I really do think that it's very possible we could upgrade in every position.
Add Chang to the list of players that basically didn't play at all at Mizzou under Konzo and then transferred out. And some of them have been in the news recently because they're re-entering the transfer portal. I'm thinking of CJ Roberts, who almost was going to be, I think I have the teams right, he was almost going to be a teammate with Mario McKinney at New Mexico State, but now he's transferring.
Yeah, I think that's where he was, I think.
And he didn't play. He redshirted his first season, Konzo's first season. Then Christian Guess transferred maybe twice, but he ended up at Samford, and now he's entered the transfer portal after, I think, only playing 10 games, but averaging like 15 points and 10 rebounds.
Yeah. As
a guard. So, I don't know. If you see those names come back up, it's just really interesting.
If I am going to criticize Konzo right now, I think that it would be some of those questionable last minute additions where we use a scholarship on a guy that's you can just never quite see a legitimate path to playing time for that person. And I mean, who's the tall guy? I can't even remember his name anymore.
Oh yeah, Axel Congo.
Yeah. I would say most of those additions, I'm just kind of scratching my head okay, I guess I'll just trust Konzo here, and it doesn't work out.
Yeah, in my mind, what's the conversation even like? If they're bringing him on and Konzo knows the guy's not going to play, what's he selling them on? A 3-year vision, 4-year vision.
Does he know he's not going to play, though? That's the weird thing. It's like, does Konzo think they're going to play?
If he did, even for a minute, you'd think that they would actually play at some point then.
Maybe he just changes his mind after they get there and he sees they can't play. But he should know that. Like, we know that.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't Konzo? And if he doesn't, to your point, then what is he telling them?
Right. What's the pitch?
I have no idea. Like, hey, come be a part of a Power 5 program and play on the practice squad against Mark Smith.
And then we'll help you transfer to another place that's a better fit.
Surely that's not the conversation.
No,
but
it can't be.
Maybe there's a market for that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to criticize Konzo at all right now, there have been some questionable late additions that none of them have worked out at all.
Yeah. And it seemed obvious every time that it probably wasn't going to.
Yeah.
All right, so who do we have returning? We have 3 players returning. We have Javon Pickett, Kobe Braun, and Jordan Wilmore.
Yikes.
And Pickett, you know him, you love him. He's
not going anywhere.
He seems like Konzo's guy through and through.
Might as well be his son.
Right. Kobe Braun probably, if you're assuming, I mean, even if Pinson comes back, maybe Kobe Braun is your best player next year, at least most consistent.
Of the returning players, yeah.
I'm saying maybe even if Pinson comes back, I mean, I guess they would be like the dynamic duo, but he showed this year at times he was the best player on the floor for Missouri.
Yeah.
So happy to have him back. And then Jordan Wilmore is a bit of a question mark. We didn't see him play very much. I think he's a guy that a lot of people assumed was going to transfer, just in the same vein as a Ed Chang, Christian Guest, Axel Congo type of player that maybe didn't fit and didn't play and then was going to move on. But as far as we can tell, he will be back next season. And actually, not to get too personal with it, but it's information out there. His mother, I believe is who it is on Twitter, has been saying that he's coming back. This is a couple weeks old now, but she was on Twitter saying that he's going to be back and that it was always the plan for him to just kind of learn behind Jeremiah Tillman this season, which makes perfect sense. I mean,
it's fine.
That's happens all the time. So hopefully, and even going back to his recruitment, there were rumors that Mizzou, potentially was tired of waiting on a couple other guys that they had offered in his class, and then he was ready to commit, and they kind of had them about even. I'm thinking of like Davian Bradford. They had them about even on their rankings, and they said, okay, if you're ready to commit, then we'll take you. So.
And Bradford ended up having a pretty nice season at Kansas State. Yeah. So.
Pretty bad Kansas State team.
Yeah.
So they had to kind of figure out what they had for the future. But yeah, he had some good moments. Can't say that about Wilmore, but he didn't really get an opportunity.
He's tall.
Yeah, and he'll have every opportunity to show that he can play next year. I mean, if he has something to prove, then he'll have all the minutes he wants. So those 3 guys are returning. 3 players returning.
There's the roster for you.
3 scholarship players returning. We have 5 incoming freshmen, 5 new faces that have not played a minute in college basketball yet. We already know about them to some extent. Sean Dura-Gordon, who has been practicing with the team since the semester mark this past season. From Springfield, Anton Brookshire and Trevon Brazil from Kickapoo. From DeSmet in St. Louis, Yaya Kita, who actually had to sit out his senior year of high school with an ACL injury. And then Kobe Braun's brother, also obviously from Alabama, Caleb Brown, who may be the most intriguing player in this freshman class. We don't necessarily have to talk about each one of these guys, but it's a pretty balanced class as far as like positionally and size goes. It just seems like it makes sense for a group of 5. None of them jump off the page as like a top 100 recruit. I thought that maybe Brookshire would climb the rankings a little bit more with COVID. Maybe the exposure wasn't quite there, but
I think he's just a little bit undersized, but he definitely can put up the points. Out of those 5 guys, if only one of them starts next year, who do you think it would be?
If only one, it's got to be Dura Gordon, I think. And I forget his measurables exactly, but I think he's kind of touted as being a potential like lockdown defender day one. So
There you go.
that plays, I think.
Yeah, you're probably right. I think he's probably, 6'6",
Yeah.
like kind of a wing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking...
If he can play a little bit of the two, if he can score a little bit and guard twos, then I think there's room for him easily.
I think Anton is definitely the most polished scorer, but I think you're exactly right about Dura Gordon. If he's a lockdown defender, then he's gonna get minutes.
Yeah.
On this team.
And potentially Brookshire, I mean, if I'm being honest, I hope Brookshire is being recruited over right now in the transfer market.
Yeah.
Because we need a more established college point guard to come in and run the show. And Brookshire, I kind of want him to be able to play off the ball more to score and not have to worry about setting up his teammates as much.
Yeah. Good segue.
Amari Davis.
Not quite.
You ready to talk about him, though?
Yeah.
Okay. We have one incoming transfer so far, and he's not exactly a point guard. Is he a point guard?
I don't think so.
His stats are kind of confusing as far as he's kind of a unique player when it comes to modern basketball, and something that Missouri hasn't really had in a little bit. He's a transfer from Green Bay. He's a 6'3" guard. He scored 17 points per game as a sophomore this past season, and most of that came from the mid-range. So he wasn't the most efficient scorer, and that maybe is cause for concern because efficient scoring is what Missouri desperately needs at every single position.
Mm-hmm.
But I think 17 points per game, if he can provide an avenue for scoring, I don't really care if it's at the rim, three-point line, or mid-range. If he can put the ball in the basket, we're good.
Yeah, I mean, he literally did not make a three-point shot his freshman year at Green Bay. And then his sophomore year, I think he shot quite a bit more threes and was a little bit better from three. But you're exactly right. I've watched quite a bit of film on this guy, and I do think he really developed from his freshman to his sophomore year. But, I mean, he really did almost all his scoring on mid-range jumpers. And I feel like he didn't even really get to the rim a whole lot. It was literally just mid-range jumpers from kind of all over. And... I mean, 17 points per game is still 17 points per game, so he was somewhat consistently making mid-range jumpers. So I guess that's definitely not what I would love to see out of anybody on Missouri's team, but I guess if you're making shots, you're making shots. I'm definitely I've fallen in love with the you're at the rim or you're shooting a three-pointer. It's the kind of offense I want to see, at least.
The analytics agree with you.
But if you can make it, then shoot it, I guess.
Missouri got beat a couple times by teams just making mid-range jumpers, and there was a few close games that Missouri won that wouldn't have been close except for the other team was knocking down long twos randomly.
Yeah, that's
so
pretty frustrating way to lose.
It might be nice to be on the other end of that. Looking at his most recent season in Green Bay, he had a 35-point game where he was 13 of 21 from two.
Wow.
He only shot 7 free throws in a 35-point outing. He only shot double-digit free throws once all season, but he was a double-digit scorer in, looks like, 80% of his games last season.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, you definitely would like to pair Amari Davis with a three-point shooter, because I don't.
Or three.
I definitely don't think we want to rely on Davis to be our primary scorer.
When you were watching his film, did it look like there was something goofy in his shot where it wouldn't translate to three-point land, or?
He's left-handed.
Okay.
But that's kind of goofy. But no, not really. I mean, I don't know. His shot's kind of interesting. Like a lot of, I don't know. A lot of his shots, he wasn't set really, but it was just going in anyway. But then again, I was watching highlights, so everything's going in.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah, he shot 46% from two this past season, 28% from three on 82 attempts. So if he can just get in the gym and practice his 3-point shooting and maybe get that up to like 33% on 80 attempts and can still convert from 2. He had a 101 offensive rating, played 86% of available minutes though. That's a lot.
Yeah, he was clearly the most important player on the team for Green Bay. And it does seem like he definitely made an effort to improve his 3-point shot and shoot more of them his second year. So maybe he'll continue to do that.
And he looks like a solid defensive player. Didn't commit a lot of fouls, but had a high steal percentage. So that probably stood out to Konzo.
That sounds
the coaching
great.
Staff. Yeah, not fouling is good. Also had a high usage rate, and very little of that was from turnovers. He was the number 3 player in his conference in lowest turnover rate. That's pretty good. Okay, so now we're at the point, Kyle, where this coaching staff they don't have to. I keep saying they have to, but they have 4 open spots to fill. Do you think they fill all 4?
I think it just depends on who they get here, but I was kind of telling you before we started recording, I think if they go out and just kind of get 3 of their top options here, maybe they don't add a 4th. If they kind of feel like they fill up on immediate needs. I don't know if you fill that last scholarship, but knowing how things typically go for Mizzou, I think they'll probably fill all 4 of them.
So let's start with what I'll call the fan favorites. It's a couple names that we've heard a million times, and I'm going to say it right now. Neither one are going to end up at Mizzou, but it's worth considering and talking about. And those names are Cam Fletcher and Caleb Love. Cam Fletcher announced he's transferring from Kentucky. I don't want to be too down on the kid, but I mean, how surprising is this? 0% surprising. He was recruited over in his class at Kentucky, and he could play multiple positions, and he was recruited over in both positions, sometimes 2 guys ahead of him. So, but his teammate at Vashon, Mario McKinney, came to Mizzou not having looked at what the depth chart looked like ahead of him. So maybe he did the same thing going to Kentucky. He announced his departure, and there was a sense around the Mizzou community that probably Missouri wasn't interested. I did find it interesting that Cam Fletcher mentioned Missouri in an interview and then also posted an Instagram post of him when he was with Vashon. Or no, it was with Kentucky when they came to Mizzou Arena. He posted a picture of himself on the court with the Tiger logo.
Clearly the Mizzou logo in the background. Yeah.
Why all of that, I don't know. But it really doesn't seem like Mizzou is interested. There are plenty of other Power 5 schools that do seem interested that he's talked about hearing from. Florida State is a very successful program in particular that he said reached out to him.
I feel like Florida State's roster is just full of guys like him anyway. Yeah. Just the really long guys that can play multiple positions. Yeah. He seems like a match for Florida State personally. Yeah.
And, wherever he goes, he's just going to have to be okay with not playing immediately. And he still has 4 years of eligibility. That's the thing with all these transfers and this, eligibility mess that COVID created. It's good that players aren't getting punished for this virus messing up their season, but it just makes a lot of things interesting when it comes to recruiting and transfers, obviously. So he's got 4 years of eligibility. Then we also have Caleb Love.
You're putting it at what percent that Caleb Love ends up at Missouri?
Caleb Love, 5%.
And Cam Fletcher?
0%.
Really? Yeah. Okay. I would probably put Cam Fletcher at like a 15% and a Caleb Love at like a 5%.
Okay.
I would say, both these guys are not probably ending up at Mizzou, but I still feel like Cam Fletcher has not said, I am going to this university next year like Caleb Love has. But
Yeah, but his coach just retired.
Yeah.
And we don't think it's an April Fool's joke. We're not sure still, but
Oh, I was going to do an April Fool's joke, and I forgot.
wow.
Wow.
I'm so
Shame.
glad you forgot. So Caleb Love, supposedly it came down to North Carolina and Mizzou in his original recruitment. He said that the coach that he had the best relationship with was Konzo Martin. Wow, doesn't that make us feel good as Mizzou fans?
Love that.
But he went to North Carolina anyway and had one of the most inefficient scoring seasons of any player ever. Like of his caliber.
Yes.
With his usage.
As a 5-star freshman.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's too bad.
I mean, he wasn't terrible, but yes,
he
was
terrible,
inefficient.
but his shooting percentages were, I would call them terrible. But he did enough, and North Carolina, and he's a freshman point guard, so that's a lot of that happens. He just happened to be on the lower end of that. He posted there was rumors, maybe he was wanting out of North Carolina, but then he posted a video a week ago or so. Basically, and he made a statement saying that he was coming back for his sophomore season. But it seems like he didn't know that Roy Williams was going to retire, because he posted something to the effect that he was surprised by the decision. And so now he doesn't know who his coach is going to be.
Could he go back on that?
Oh, absolutely.
That'd be weird, but I guess he had
when
no idea.
Yeah, when your coach leaves for any reason, everything's back on the
Everything
table.
changed, yeah.
So I don't know. I
mean, I would be thrilled if he wanted to come to Mizzou.
Absolutely. No, I think, maybe I sound down on him because he kind of struggled a little bit his freshman season, but I think he's incredibly talented, and he was just asked to do a lot as a freshman point guard. That's really tough to do. Transitioning from high school basketball to the ACC is not easy.
Oh, yeah.
And so him having another offseason to get ready for college ball and knowing what he's getting into a little bit better for a sophomore season, I would absolutely love to see him come be the point guard at Missouri. I don't think that's going to happen, but it would be awesome if it did. I put that combined 5% on those two players, but I would take either one of them. Would you take Cam Fletcher?
No.
You wouldn't?
I don't think I would.
Okay, interesting. 4 years of eligibility.
Yeah.
Or after 3 years, Konzo might be like, well, son, do you have a good reason for using that fourth year?
You're probably right. I just think I don't know, man. I don't know Cam Fletcher personally. I haven't seen him play in like a year. I have no idea. Yeah. I think that there's probably better options out there, but I mean, maybe you don't scoff at a 4-star talent from your home state either. I don't know.
He hasn't listed St. Louis as having
really
made contact with him.
I feel like that's like the perfect destination.
Yeah. All right, so a few less familiar names that we need to get into. I'm just going to run down this list real quick. This is way too many guys. I think I tried to limit this to guys that maybe Mizzou has some kind of connection with, or they've at least heard from the coaching staff to some extent. We have Antonio Day Jr. from FIU, 17-point scorer as a junior. He actually listed a Final Four of Clemson, Arkansas, Pittsburgh, and Providence on March 15th, but then on March 19th, he said, never mind, his recruitment is wide open. Then we have Marcus Carr from Minnesota. He averaged 19 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds per game as a junior. He is actually going to enter his name in the NBA draft, but is also in the transfer portal kind of as a fallback if he doesn't like what he hears from the NBA. I'm going to skip these two guys for now. Bayron Matos, New Mexico, 6'9" forward, averaged 6 points, 4 rebounds per game. He has 4 years of eligibility remaining. Marion Jackson from Toledo, 18 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists per game. He only has 1 year of eligibility remaining. He's a guard. Noah Gurley from Furman. He averaged 15 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists. He's a 6'8" forward, and he shot 37% from 3 on 100 attempts.
He's got everybody on him.
Yeah, he has 2 years.
Has heard from Missouri, but he's heard from literally half of the Division I basketball as well.
Then a couple guys that we are familiar with, but they haven't. It's not been reported that Missouri's reached out, but there's previous interest, we'll say, and that's Adam Miller from Illinois and Rocket Watts from Michigan State. If you're a longtime listener of the podcast, we talked about Rocket Watts a lot in the first 10 episodes of this podcast when we were recruiting him pretty hard.
When we were.
Oh, yeah. We personally.
Yeah.
So all of those guys have some kind of connection to Missouri, but they either haven't heard from Missouri this time around or have so many schools after them that it seems like a long shot. And there's a few clues that maybe a handful of other guys are at the top of Missouri's list. One other guy I'll throw in here is Kyler Edwards from Texas Tech. He is just a really good player that just announced he was transferring like today, so that's worth reaching out.
He lost his coach today.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine?
Not lost him like he died, but
no. Can you imagine though, like your coach, for fans really, not for like the players. I mean, it's always bad when your coach leaves, but probably the players don't mind as much where he ends up. But for the fans, if you're a Texas Tech fan and your guy who is like, the best coach you've had since Bobby Knight, he just leaves you for Texas.
Yeah,
that's horrendous.
That's horrendous. I don't like that at all. Chris Beard very well could have just hung on for another couple of weeks and gotten the UNC job, and it would have been like
that makes all the sense in the world.
A lot less slimy to me, but
well,
not slimy, but it's just weird. Like,
did he attend Texas? I saw somewhere that he attended the University of Texas.
Why would you ever want to be the coach at Texas?
For basketball.
For
anything.
I guess if you want to make money, but I mean, that's literally like the only thing good that can come out of being a coach at Texas. Like one wrong move and like everybody hates you. Like literally Shaka Smart he was a 3 seed in this year's tournament and he was like escaping because he probably hated his life.
Oh yeah. Chris Beard was a manager at the University of Texas at Austin under Longhorns coach Tom Penders.
I feel like a lot of people just want to, I don't know, get that big name coaching job under their belt, and then so Chris Beard will go to Texas and he'll be pretty good there, and then he'll leave after like 4 years, and then he'll go back to somewhere on like the Texas Tech level and be really good again.
You think?
Probably. That's what like a lot of people do. I feel like
yeah.
At a place like when they reach that, I don't know if Texas is the pinnacle necessarily. It's the pinnacle of like funding, but they get to that mountain and they're like, all right, I'm here. I'm going to make a lot of money. And all the boosters are going to hate me in a couple of years when our team is only decent.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to go be really good somewhere else where I have less pressure.
Well, yeah. I mean, what Shaka Smart's doing, I mean, is...
Exactly.
But his team was a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. That's better than decent. Chris Beard, on March 27th, 2016, he accepted the head coaching job at UNLV. When Texas Tech head coaching job was made vacant by Tubby Smith's departure to Memphis, Beard took the Texas Tech job on April 15th, 2016, less than a month.
So what you're telling me is he could still take the UNC job?
He could, yeah, absolutely. Watch out for that. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so yeah, Kyler Edwards, very good player. If he wants to come to Missouri, I would accept him in a heartbeat. Some people think he might follow Chris Beard to Texas, which that makes sense. Since we're talking about Texas and Chris Beard and Shaka Smart, Tamar Bates was committed to, so we're kind of all over the place here, but we're on Texas, so I'm going to stick with it. He's not a transfer. He committed to Texas. Mizzou was recruiting him. He was one of the top guys that they wanted this past recruiting class, and he chose Texas. His coach left for Marquette. He is asking out of his commitment. That will be accepted, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. And he's back on the market, and he's heard from several teams, including Missouri.
Almost feels like a transfer at this point.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, I would think Missouri would be right there in the thick of things.
I like Missouri's chances.
Do you?
Yeah. I think it makes a lot of sense. Close to home, kind of his decision, this decision for him is going to be a pretty quick one. I think he's going to have to make a decision and move on. He did say that he's going to wait till after this AAU tournament that he's in right now before he really digs in. But I think after that, we could expect something pretty quick. It is kind of worrisome that Missouri already has 5 freshmen coming in, but Bates is a guy that you gotta, if he wants to come, you gotta make room for him, I think. So now there's a handful of guys here that are transfers that make a lot of sense for Missouri, that Missouri has reached out to, and I think you and I agree that they could pretty easily make their way to Columbia. Just depends on if one of the other suitors woos them better than Konzo is able to. And we'll start with Brandon McKissic. He is played at UMKC. He averaged 17 points per game. He was a 40% three-point shooter for his career. He's originally from St. Louis, and he has 1 year of eligibility remaining. And it seems like he is Missouri's top transfer target at this point, and for good reason. A guard that looks like he could basically come in and have the Drew Smith role day one, and everything would be great.
Yeah, I would love to get Brandon McKissic, and it seems like the rumor is that he was going to commit to Kansas pretty soon, and they recruited over him and kind of pulled his offer, and so he had to kind of take a step back. And
they pulled in a transfer and a traditional freshman recruit.
Yep. And I mean, that's understandable, I suppose. Brandon McKissic is a immediate impact kind of guy, but yeah, he only has 1 year of eligibility. So, but with the position that Missouri's in, I mean, that just doesn't really matter to me. I think you just take him no matter what. Yeah. But a guy that shot 43% from 3 last year. Yeah. Good grief, that's amazing. Yeah,
that would look like 70% compared to Mizzou's roster this past season.
Yes.
If he did that for Missouri, we would be like, oh, you were allowed to shoot this well from 3? Yeah. We forgot that you were allowed.
Yeah. He's announcing tomorrow, which will be the day that probably most of you actually hear this episode. So I think Missouri's in the driver's seat here. After what happened with Kansas, I think it's down to Missouri and St. Louis. I think he ends up at Mizzou.
We'll have our fingers crossed, and we'll know very shortly whether he'll be coming to Missouri or not. Another guard that Missouri's in on is Wendell Green Jr. He's transferring from Eastern Kentucky, averaged 16 points per game, shot 36% from 3. He's originally from Detroit, Michigan, so there's a connection there with the Mizzou staff. And he has 4 years of eligibility. A little on the shorter side compared to the big guards that Konzo's been recruiting to Missouri and has historically recruited in his coaching career, but it seems like Missouri wants this guy, and I'm all for it. He is like a do-it-all guard. He plays good defense, doesn't turn the ball over, is efficient from the floor, shoots okay from 3, finds his teammates well, gets to the free throw line, pretty much everything you want.
Yeah, he averaged 16 points per game and 5 assists as a freshman. Yeah. I mean, that is
most assists of any freshman in the country.
Yeah, that's remarkable to be that involved in your team as a freshman. And you may have already said this, but Konzo, I believe, recruited him a little bit in high school, but I don't think he ever ended up offering him.
Right.
So I wish he would have just sent him that offer.
Yes. And we wouldn't have to be dealing with this. But.
Yes, but I definitely think that Wendell Green Jr. is definitely possible that he can end up at Mizzou. They've got to fight off a few other Power 5 programs. I think Auburn was one that I saw that was after him as well, but. I think he's like 5'10", 5'11", so yeah, he's not like optimum height, but sometimes just talent can supersede like kind of not ideal measurables.
Yeah, that wouldn't concern me at all. If he was a little bit taller, I'd be, he'd probably be looking at Kansas and Kentucky and Duke and all those other places. Then let's see here. I've got Christian Bishop, who just recently announced he was transferring from Creighton. It's a familiar name. Missouri recruited him back in the day. He's a 6'7" forward, originally from Lee Summit. And when he became available, he jumped pretty much right to the top of my personal list as far as guys I hope end up at Missouri, especially just looking at the way Creighton used him this past season. He actually played the 5 spot for them most of the time, and he and Ryan Kalkbrenner were the 2 guys that kind of played that post position. And if he's not a 3-point shooter, so he doesn't really stretch the floor like that. But he's just a crafty, undersized guy that he plays like a big man, even though he's undersized, and he can handle the ball a bit. And where he's really versatile is on defense. He can guard the 5, the 4, the 3. And so with, Konzo's talked about wanting positionless basketball in the past, and I think Christian Bishop makes a lot of sense, and he's a guy that you could he'd be able to post to one of those coming home posts on Instagram with the Mizzou Photoshop, and I would be all over that.
How would you compare him to like a Kevin Puryear?
Less of a 3-point shooter than Kevin Puryear was. I think he's probably more athletic than Puryear, and just like quicker and
a little bouncier, longer arms.
Has more defensive versatility than Puryear did. Puryear was kind of like stuck at he can only guard the 4, and he's undersized for SEC post play, so he had to get creative with his offensive game. Bishop is undersized, but he's just athletic enough to make it a mismatch. You signing up for him?
I would absolutely. I'd be thrilled about that.
Who else do we have here that we haven't talked about? Anybody in particular?
One guy I think we forgot to add to our list that I just realized is Jariah Horn. I don't think we talked about him before.
He actually committed to Tulsa.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Transferred from, so this is kind of crazy. He was at Tulsa previously.
I was going to say, isn't that where he was?
He was at Tulsa, transferred for, what do you call it? A grad transfer to Colorado.
Yes, where he was pretty decent there.
Yep. And he's originally from Missouri, the state of Missouri. And then, it made sense. Konzo should be on him. But then he used his COVID transfer eligibility to go back to Tulsa.
Is Frank Haith still there?
Yes, he is.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
He just wanted to go back to Frank Haith's loving embrace.
I mean, yeah.
Seems like a nice guy. He probably has a nice loving
Frank
embrace.
Haith has his way with he has
a way with transfers.
Yeah. And players that have played for him just really do seem to love him. Even the ones that leave him just keep coming back. That was a guy that I definitely would have had towards the top of my list as far as guys I wanted. But, he ended up at Tulsa. Missouri did reach out to Tyson Walker, transfer from Northeastern, but he quickly committed to Michigan State. He was one of the better transfers in general available in the whole country. So we've thrown a lot of names at you, dear listener. We went through all the players leaving, returning, the incoming freshmen, the transfer that we have committed, and then the possible additions. So, Kyle, if you've got 4 open spots to fill, you don't have to fill them all. What is your wish list that you think is somewhat reasonable for those 4 spots? And part of your wish list can be leaving the 4th one empty.
All right, I'm gonna pick 3 that would be at the top of my wish list. I'm gonna throw in one that is probably not quite realistic, but I would say probably at the top of my list is Brandon McKissic. 1 year of eligibility, but I think he just provides an immediate spark that we need, like in a way that we need it, like a good shooter, good size for a guard. So give me Brandon McKissic. Give me Wendell Green Jr. 4 years of eligibility and has already, basically in a year that doesn't count, has shown that he can be the guy for a team. So kind of the sky's the limit, honestly, for Wendell Green, in my opinion, for what kind of stats he can put up in 4 years of college if he's already doing this in year 1. And give me Christian Bishop as a guy who is a little bit different than we've had in the post, but I think he probably would play the 5 potentially at Mizzou. I'm assuming he would probably beat out Yaya Kita for the 5 spot and take over for Jeremiah Tillman. Mizzou might have to get a little creative with their lineups, but I think it'd be okay.
And spoiler alert, I agree with you on Christian Bishop, but if we have any confidence that Jordan Wilmore can contribute next year, then there's your size at the 5.
Yeah, there you go.
And so if you could actually look at Creighton with Kalkbrenner and Bishop this past season, as far as having a traditional 7-footer, and then Bishop, being that smaller 5.
Yeah.
So
and
go ahead.
My fourth that I would probably, I don't know. There's a lot of guys on this list I'd be happy to have, and honestly, there's probably more guys that haven't even announced yet that I may want to get on at some point. But I would say Adam Miller from Illinois. I don't think it would be like insane if he came to Mizzou.
He's originally from Peoria,
I think so.
Yeah.
And he was a big time recruit coming out of high school too. But I don't think it would be like mind blowing necessarily if he wanted to come to Mizzou. But I do think he's going to have better options. But he's just he averaged 8.3 points per game and shot well from 3. I mean, that's what he's known for, is being a good 3-point shooter. Has still 3 or 4 years of eligibility left. Scoring 8 points a game on that Illinois team with how many weapons they had, that's still pretty good. And honestly, I'm a little bit shocked that he's leaving, just because I think that he would have a lot of opportunities to score a lot next year. But so that would be probably like my most like unrealistic one. But man, I would be ecstatic if we could get Adam Miller.
Okay, so I'm using all 4 spots on my wish list, and I'll start it with Tamar Bates. I know that creates a 6-man incoming freshman class, but at this point, with the way college basketball works, I think, and there was
not
news,
everybody can play.
Yeah, well, there was news today that the NCAA is going to vote on a permanent one-time per player transfer rule where they can transfer one time and not have to sit out. So if that becomes the new normal, then I think we're going to see transfer portals like this year. I mean, maybe not quite this much, but going forward, it's going to be just open season for transfers.
Which honestly, with how many spots Mizzou has open this year, I think this has been kind of a blast. Honestly,
yeah.
I think it's been really fun.
Yeah,
and it may not be this fun every year, but
this might be the most fun it is when we can think about the good players that might come, and we may be disappointed, but right now we're not disappointed yet.
The opportunity is exciting, but yes. We'll see how it goes. So
give me Tamar Bates in that 6-man freshman class, and then see who sticks, see who doesn't.
I like that.
They in the 5-man class that we have right now, not all of them are going to end their career at Missouri. Like I would take anybody's bet on that. So add him there, and that helps alleviate some of the stress of kind of not getting the top guys in the state lately. And then the other 3 I have, I'm copying you with Brandon McKissic, Wendell Green Jr., and Christian Bishop. I talked enough about why I think Bishop makes a lot of sense. I'm a sucker for that coming home graphic on Instagram.
Man, that reunion worked well for Jordan Barnett.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's so many guys that leave the state of Missouri. And, yeah, in today's age, you've got a second chance on a lot of these guys that leave.
But Brandon McKissic and Wendell Green, I think that's the perfect combination of a 1-year grad transfer type player to come in and just like shore up the guard position, and then Green, a guy that will come in and have 4 years of eligibility and basically becoming a part of the incoming freshman class. Mm-hmm. And having him and Brookshire in the backcourt for the next 4 years, that sounds perfect.
Sounds fun.
Yeah. So that's my wish list, and honestly, we've done a few different wish lists for like recruiting classes and even transfer classes on this podcast, and this maybe is the most realistic one that I've put together. Seems like it's doable.
Yeah, I agree.
It's exciting times.
It is fun. It really is.
I just thought of something else that I was going to ask you about, but now I can't remember. Go on if you have something else to say.
That's it. I ran out of thoughts at the wrong moment.
Dang, that's too bad.
No, I think like I said earlier, some people are really just wanting to jump all over Konzo for players leaving, and maybe there is, I don't know, maybe there's something to be concerned about why so many players are leaving, but I think that you can very legitimately make the case for why players want to leave and why it's totally fine for them to do so, and I think we can really upgrade the whole roster if things go well for us here in this free agency period, if you will. But I don't know. There's so much yet to be seen that I'm not going to criticize Konzo over what's happened yet.
Yeah, you got to wait and see. And what I was going to mention there was regarding post play, And I think if Konzo doesn't grab a big man that looks ready to compete for minutes day one and contribute, then I think that has to say something about his confidence in Wilmore. And whether we've seen it as fans or not, if Wilmore's not ready to play, then what are we doing at the post next season?
It's a great question.
There's nothing there. And I mean, Yaya Kita coming off of ACL, hasn't played basketball in a while. Like, I don't know.
You can see Kobe Braun at the 5.
Which maybe that's not the worst thing, but you need some shooters out there with him if you're going to do that.
Yeah.
And we don't have that yet.
I don't love that.
So.
Well, I don't want to think about that, Cameron.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think the place where we could see a name appear in the next couple weeks that is completely off the radar right now is at the post, or maybe like a bigger forward who can play the 4 or the 5.
Yeah.
That's where I could see somebody emerge that we haven't talked about yet, and then that might be a quick deal. You know, a name comes out, or we don't even really know the name until they're announcing that they're coming to Missouri. So maybe be on the lookout for that. When it comes to guards, I think we've talked about everybody that Missouri really wants to get. If they don't end up with Bates, McKissic, or Green, then they're potentially looking at backup options on the transfer market. So we don't want to get to that point.
No. Yeah, that's the thing. It's exciting, but we kind of have to hit on some guys for it to really, I don't know, for it to continue to be exciting.
Have you heard about this kid, Parker Fox?
I have heard his name, yeah, how he's a D2 guy.
D2 player from Minnesota, I think, played Division II basketball in South Dakota. Most people think he's going to end up at Minnesota. But I watched some of his highlights, and he's really fun to watch. He averaged like 26 points per game this past season at his D2 school, and he's like incredibly athletic, just like dunking on everybody. He had 80 dunks this season.
Oh my gosh.
Which is more than Kofi Coburn had at Illinois, and he was dunking a lot of basketballs.
Not to bring up Kansas, I guess, again, but didn't they take a D2 guy?
They did, yeah. I don't remember his name.
Cam Martin or something.
Yeah, that's it.
That's a jump. I mean, as much as you hate Kansas, that is a jump from D2 to Kansas.
Yeah.
Good grief.
Yeah, it's too bad he won't be successful because Kansas is going to be awful next year.
Hey, it's crazy what happens whenever you don't have that money coming in anymore, right?
True.
Got to settle for D2 guys.
Yep. Yeah, couldn't be us. All right, well, that's a lot of players we talked about. That's a lot of roster turnover. It's going to be a brand new season next year.
It's going to be fun, I hope.
Hopefully there's a Mizzou Madness that we can go to and see all these fresh faces.
I'd be down. Hopefully COVID's gone by then.
Man, I can only hope.
All right, everybody, that's all I got for the folks. Let's see, it's been a little while since I've done this. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We're on Twitter and Instagram at Mizzou Sports Pod, and you can email us at MissouriSportsPod@gmail.com.
You can find our shirts and our stickers on our online shop, MissouriSportsPod.BigCartel.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. We will see you next week.